Good to see you, brother. Yeah, how are you, bro?
Oh, very well. How you doing, George?
I'm good. I'm good. I know we were chatting here while we were getting on the screen just about kind of like, you've been at CoSell for a long time, and it's really awesome to see that space being really, I think, more important than ever. Scott Leese, I don't know if you know Scott, but
Oh yeah.
he was, yeah. So he's got a bunch of stuff going on, but he was talking about lately because I think he just launched a community around people's network and really bringing people together to drive relationships, but ultimately, of course, we got to put food on the table, right? So like, how do we drive referrals from that network, right? And I
Yep.
think he called it go to network instead of go to market. He's been calling it go to network, and it's so true. Like these motions, they're not new, right? Like I saw Kyle Poyer. I don't know if you're familiar with Kyle over at
That's
OpenView.
Open View. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the VC there. He was talking today. Well, I saw the post today about referrals within B2B. Now, again, nothing new, right? Like the technology that we use to build these relationships and to facilitate the efficiencies, et cetera, organize, manage, et cetera, might be new. Like you guys are definitely innovators in your category, which will drive into relationship led uh, growth here in a second. But these aren't new. Like I remember when I was a door-to-door salesperson, I always go back. I always talk about it because it was such a interesting and profound experience in that these fundamentals existed in that experience. Obviously, a B2B sales is quite different in many ways, but the fundamentals are really the same. And so, when we would do uh, you know, a, a successful sale at the door or in people's living rooms. And of course, this was back when I was in grad school. Uh, one of the things that we were really, really focused on after we make the sale, and by the way, not even, not even, or not only rather, if we closed the deal, right? We had a 20-minute sales cycle. We were in and out. Of course, again, B2B is different, but we would ask for referrals,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so we would say, and we sold educational books. So it'd be like, hey, do you know any other families in your child's class or in the neighborhood that would benefit from, what we were selling? And we did it manually and we wrote on pieces of paper and things like that, right? Oh yeah, Sally Sue and the Joneses, 2 blocks down, and I'll give them a ring and let them know I'm sending you over. Those sort of things, right, are super, super important, and they were really important to you being successful as a salesperson within that environment. And I think
Yeah.
even as a B2B person, super successful. So in any case, I love these technologies that y'all have been building. How are you? Why don't you take a quick second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about CoSell and what you're doing at CoSell?
Yeah, yeah. George, thanks for having me. I'm P. Ryan, based in Austin, Texas. Been working on CoSell for the last 2.5 years. We took a pre-seed early on in December 2020, and then just raised our seed round, which it gives us a little more time to solve this, big hairy problem that we've all been seeing, which is, how do you go to market when the number of buyers really hasn't changed, right? That's remained the same, but really just the amount of noise in the market, with all sorts of cold outreach, that's just only gotten exponentially worse, right? And so, companies are looking for new channels, right? Whether it be, partner led growth, product led growth, community led growth, or for us, right, relationship led growth. So it's really, how do you tap into the relationships of the people you know and trust, and know and trust you to unlock, revenue, to reach your goals, etc. And so, we've kind of been in, I would say, like R&D phase for the last kind of, up until about 6 months ago, right? So, last 2 years, just like really trying to sit on this problem and figure out ways to solve it, because it's certainly a complex problem. And so Scott Leese is actually an advisor,
Oh, no way.
for
Awesome.
CoSell. Yeah, and so, we're riffing all the time. I love his logo with GTM
Yeah.
United. I was like, hey, are you a soccer fan? He's like, oh yeah, big soccer fan.
Yeah.
So
I think he
yeah,
used to play soccer too.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, used to play soccer, and so anyways, yeah, he's been saying this for a long time now. Brendan Cassidy, my co-founder, has been saying this a long time now. I've been saying this a long time now. I would say my voice is not as loud as theirs, but I've been living and breathing this, right? Which is, you know, when I was selling LinkedIn Sales Solutions, which at the time, was a team of 6 of us, and all it did was integrate with LinkedIn integrated with Salesforce, and so the whole story then, and it still holds true today. It's funny how things kind of go in cycles, right? It goes from, like MySpace was a great idea at one point, and I it's just funny how things kind of come back. Not to say that we're building MySpace, but yeah, like multi-threading, right? That is something, we were talking about in 2013. Customer-led growth, that was something we were talking about, then. Referral selling, that was something we were talking about then. And so I think no one really wants to ever kind of change unless change is necessary. And so, if you have leads just kind of falling from the sky, which that was really the case over the last couple of years, right? Where, inbound was just filling up your plate and with conversations. And so, looking forward, that's just unfortunately not the case. And so, if you're going to kind of break through the noise, increase your likelihood of success, which if you're a startup, like success is not, it's not given. It's hard to kind of get out there and be heard and reach your kind of target prospects and kind of build influence in deals. And so we have a really great shot at solving this problem. We haven't figured everything out yet entirely. I would say we've kind of morphed as a company. Like we started off in very much so like the account mapping space, similar to like a Crossbeam or Reveal, or I think there's a couple others too. But and for us, like we're just all about solving the problem, right? As sellers, right? So and has really been seeing some traction is this Chrome extension that sits on top of LinkedIn. And so it's kind of this single player product where you can sign up as a seller and basically tap into your customers for intros and where their network already exists, right, on LinkedIn, or your investors for intros or advisors or execs within your company. And so we've kind of built this product that allows for an operationalized and scalable way of doing that. For us, really, our vision long term is really to be really the relationship management platform that for individuals and for companies to help them connect, network, and reach their goals, right? Which is like a super lofty goal, right? To be that, right? Because a lot of people ask like, oh, well, are you looking to like displace LinkedIn? I would say LinkedIn it just has a different use case, right? It's just really much so your professional identity. It's where you go to kind of post and if you leave a conversation with someone and you connect on LinkedIn, it's let's just say like you and I, George, we're kind of going after similar buyers and audiences, right? Like if we just connect on LinkedIn, it's not that meaningful, right? From a go-to-market perspective. And so, I think there's this opportunity to build a platform that allows for the exchange of relationship capital, right? And in some cases, right, the law of reciprocity, like works terrifically, right? And so if I was making intros for you or sharing intel with you about certain accounts, I'm sure you would do that for me. And then other cases too, we found money talks, and if you can kind of pay for access, right, and intel into accounts, then there's certainly value there. And so yeah, we're trying to build a platform that kind of lives in both of those worlds, right? and is flexible enough to cover kind of these different use cases. But yeah, so far so good. It's been a lot of fun over the last 2.5 years. Obviously, the ups and downs, right? As a founder, just got to strap
Oh,
on for the.
brother. Where do we even start with that? Right?
Yeah,
Like you got 2 years on me here with Asset Mule, and we were sort of talking about that. And I was like flattered that you were like, oh, super cool value prop. And I was like, please tell me what is it? Because we've been at it now for about 3 or 4 months. We have, super small team. It's just a founding team. We haven't raised anything. We'll probably go out and raise like some friends and family, like a pre-seed kind of angel thing. But, we're not trying to play that like VC game. Let's just, do smoke and mirrors and try to raise a bunch of money and then figure it out. We really want to figure it out. We're not going to figure it out in totality as you know well, but, start to get some signs that we're, building something meaningful, and that we're, moving in the right direction. So it was really cool. Thank you for saying that earlier.
yeah,
I'd
of
love to
course,
hear what that value proposition was
dude.
for
Anything
you.
you're building, I'm buying. So
Oh, thanks,
yeah,
brother. I appreciate that.
yeah,
Likewise,
yeah.
likewise.
But no, genuinely, I do think it's a great idea, and there's the gap in the market. We can chat offline about that more, but yeah, it's awesome that you've jumped into the deep end, as they say, and it's best that you do figure it out first, right? Versus yeah, there's a lot of folks that kind of just raise based on a spreadsheet, and you haven't figured it out, and you've got the pressure, which is
Yeah,
that's no fun if you
yeah,
you know
totally. And I'd say that it also depends on your DNA. Some folks could raise on a spreadsheet, right? And that's something that they're comfortable because I think you got to be comfortable to do that, but also be like, you have, I don't know, like in the past, I was sort of unclear on whether pedigree mattered and stuff, and I think like the way that I looked at it was from an execution day-to-day perspective. I felt like some of the best salespeople I knew were like, grinded out, folks who were like bussers at restaurants who just, had the grit and the grime to get
yeah,
things done and to learn and hunger and things like that. So I sort of looked on at the world from that lens. Um, and so I said, uh, maybe that, I didn't put a lot of weight on that, on the pedigree, but I think that, look, whether you like it or not, optics and these sort of things do matter, and I think there's certain environments where they tend to matter a little more. And from what I've viewed over the last 20 years being in this game, those optics do matter, and pedigree does matter. And doesn't guarantee success, obviously, but what we're talking about is the VC game, right? We
right,
are right now in a situation where we've seen just a world of companies doing the usual. Pete, you've been in this game a long time. Raise a bunch of money and and uh, at tremendous valuations, and nobody has it figured out yet, right? And then you can have a real disaster. So there's examples like that where it's very clear that it's not a guaranteed success, and it doesn't in some cases mean a lot. And again, like you know I guess one thing that I will say is, as I've been in this game now 22 years or something like that, I'm less opinionated than I was before. It's at some point, like 10 years ago, I was like, yeah, this is how you do things, etc. Now I'm like, you know what? You just keep walking forward and trying your best to make decisions, and and staying on your toes, right? As you
sure.
make decisions.
Well, I also think, like when we were in San Francisco, just like I would say when the tech scene in the city was just starting to kind of take off, and there were a lot of events and things, and the world was a little simpler then, I would say, right? The bar for product was definitely lower, right? You didn't need as much funding, I would say, to compete. Although you could also make the argument with AI and like Copilot and all these, all these tools that I'm sure will pop up around go to market, including CoSell. You'll need kind of fewer folks to go to market, less funding. But yeah, I mean, it's still yeah, it's a strange world we live in for sure. I feel like yeah, being those humble experiences just yeah, it just gives you more wisdom, right? And so yeah, more wisdom probably it results in less of an opinion, which I agree with
It's
completely.
interesting, right? I mean, you and Brendan have been in the game for a long, long time, and so I think it's founders like you guys who have been around, seen it, seen the movie, etc., that have a different approach. It feels like than maybe first time founders or these more junior folks who have just got into the space. It feels a lot more methodical. It feels a lot more mature. If that's even a thing that I could say, and I just mean that from an experience perspective. There's not this like grandiose energy. It's kind of like, hey, you know what? This is going to take a long time. We're in for the journey. We've seen it before, and the founder journey is definitely not a an easy one, right?
100%. No, it's not. Well, first off, thanks for that. Yeah, it's been great working with Brendan, right? Because he's certainly has a few years on me. Not that he's old or anything, but yeah, he has a lot of wisdom for sure, and he's real about stuff, right?
Yeah,
He'll kind of say it how it is, and which is great to have in a co-founder, right? Because there's part of it, right? You kind of have to sell yourself before you sell the world, right? But you also want to be real with yourself around like, okay, um, here's our expectations, right, of the goals that we need to hit. Here are the potential obstacles that we may run into, and you know, um, Reid Hoffman always said it best, right? You kind of want to have your plan A, plan B, and plan Z. And so, yeah, more recently, we've been like kind of just, yeah, for every decision, right? Just trying to map that out
mm,
the best we can. So we're living that stoic lifestyle, right? Expecting for the worst to happen, with any kind of decision that we make. But yeah, if I don't know if you experience this with your startup at all, but um, making a decision and like sticking with it can be a challenge, right? Like I would say just mentally, right? Because you're you're gonna second guess yourself. You're gonna think about those like scenarios where okay, maybe this was the wrong decision or what have you. Um, but ultimately, like I feel like if you make a decision, you stick with it, that's really where um, there's going to be more of an outcome, right? Versus, you make a decision, you don't fully follow through with it, and then you never really learn. You don't learn anything, and then you're also not like moving the ball forward.
yeah,
Uh, it's kind of what I've been seeing.
totally. I think there's something that comes up when you mention this is there is a thing I believe to pivoting too fast, right?
Right.
Pivoting too fast or giving up on a direction too fast. Now, it's easier said than done after the fact, right? To
Right.
sit there and go, "Oh boy, we should have kept going in that direction because that category became a thing." For example, I'll give you an example. Back in 20, actually, yes, 2009, so 2009, my co-founder, a guy named John Bruce, who's now the co-founder of Vivin, this sales engineering pre-sales startup, and I know they've done quite well over the last couple of years. Anyway, shout out to John. But I remember we started to work on a tool, which at the time we were talking about as an inside sales specific tool, right? Because we were working in Salesforce, and that's all we had, and we didn't feel that it was optimized for the inside sales, which we would call now like an SDR role, right? Managing inbounds, the interface makes sense for that workflow, and then outbound prospecting and building lists and the whole nine. Well, I remember we did an incubator about 2 years later. So that we started on that journey on 2009, as I mentioned, and then we did an incubator Really, it was towards the end of 2010 when we applied, and we, eventually did Angel Pad in 2011. And what was interesting was, we had an initial vision for the product and it didn't exist, Pete, right? Like, again,
Yeah.
there was insidesales.com, but that was more of a dialer. If you remember those folks, Ken, and
Yep.
shout out to Ken Krog and those guys there. But there really wasn't anything made for that SDR, which we didn't call it an SDR. It was just inside sales rep, right? And so we gave up on a direction, I think, a little too quickly, and we started to pivot into, like, see, basically building another CRM, which, was was not was not really a good direction, I think, in retrospect. Although, like, you see systems now like Outreach and Sales Often, those folks who, were built on top of Salesforce, moving in those directions. But my point is that, we if we would have, hypothetically speaking, of course, it's easier for me to say
Right.
now in
Of course.
retrospect,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? If we would have continued on that path, maybe we would have gotten somewhere. Because I remember when we were going through demo day and then subsequently setting up meetings with VCs, they were like, "This is not a thing. You got Marketo and you got Eloqua, and there's marketing automation that does this stuff, and why can't you do this in CRM, et cetera?" And we were just banging the table. I remember leaving those meetings going, boy, they just don't get it. And because,
Right.
like, again, the category wasn't made. So, there's those examples where, to your point, sticking to something and sticking to it long term, like Manny Medina at Outreach and Kyle Porter at SalesLoft, and even, look, even the early folks who I remember, Yesware, ended up launching around the same time we started going. They took a different direction, but you know what? They've had a decent outcome, and they had their exit, and they stayed true to kind of their niche. So, so that's what comes up for me when you bring up the pivoting too quickly. And then I would say that for startups that I've been part of in the last couple years, as a non-founder, boy, you're not going to figure out anything in 3 months. And so
Right.
making decisions very quickly, it felt like there was a lot of fear at times and a lot of, like, knee-jerk reactions, um, around making decisions around, who to even pursue as a persona, right? Those types of things too, I think, are super important. Doubling down, if you truly believe in what you're building early on, and pursuing that persona and giving it time to build, to kind of come to fruition, I think, is important. Again, easier said than done in retrospect, because, there's so many examples of pivoting that that ends up being successful. But, you know, you never know, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, you've got the Slack example, right? It was what a gaming company, turned into chat, right? And so, yeah, I mean, hindsight's always 2020. I can't agree with you more. I would say during those times though of kind of getting to product market fit, right? And there's a difference, right, between like go to market fit and product market fit. I think as a sales founder, in the early days of CoSell, I thought, okay, we were at product market fit because we had go to market fit, right? And you know, it's different, right? It's definitely different. The more important of the two, in my opinion, is really product market fit,
Mm.
right? Which is, our first is like, can you accomplish the goal that the user is trying to take, right? And then from there, it's like, do users that are accomplishing that goal, can they, are they saying they like it? And then, um, and next after that, it's like, okay, do they actually like it? Are they coming back into the app, and are you looking at the data to validate that? And then from there, finally, it's like, can you figure out a profitable go-to-market strategy to acquire kind of more of these customers and users, right? Which but yeah, getting to that, right? I would say keep your team less than six, right? Um, more than six, it feels like there's more just kind of overall like people overhead, right? Your burn's going to be higher than what you want it to be. And ultimately you need, you know, um, an engineer, a product person, a designer, um, someone in, sales and marketing. That's it, right? And sometimes you can even get, I mean, these days with AI, man, like you might even need, you could outsource the design. The engineer is really the product person, and they're using Copilot to be a 10x engineer or whatever, right? So it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how companies evolve over time, right? I was just in San Francisco, and I mean, it's horrible to see that like some of the biggest companies in the world have just left the city, right? And there's all this open office space, and I was watching the news there, and there was a spokesperson talking about, okay, well, we have all this open office space, we're going to convert it into apartments, um, and but then also, we're thinking that there's going to be a bunch of AI companies, right, that pop up, that will take up the office space. And in my head, I'm kind of thinking like, well, how many employees do you really need in an AI company, right? I mean, it all depends. I think that's just like yet to be known,
Mm.
right? Maybe you need more than you think, but you know, it's yeah, it's kind of wild.
Yeah.
So you're in Miami still, right?
I am in Miami, and to your point, I don't think that we know what the world of AI looks like yet, right? Like I think
Yeah,
part of what we've been experiencing the last year and a half in within the macro environment, certainly in technology, and even more specific within B2B SaaS, has been influenced by this AI movement. But I don't think we know. I
right.
think there's still aspects to an organization that includes human beings
Yeah, for sure.
that we just don't know. Like, yeah, you can have Chat GPT write up a bunch of content, which by the way, I was trying to use it earlier today, and I was just like, none of this stuff is
Relevant,
usable. Yeah,
right?
it's none of it was usable. I had to write everything from scratch, which is fine. But it just reminds me that we're not there yet. And maybe we'll be there at some point where we could automate a lot of the workflow that a human does. But there's other aspects outside of that, right? Like human resource stuff, right?
Mhm.
Organizations need people operations, those sort of things. How much can you give a AI system that function, right? Like
For
that's
sure.
so much about the culture of the organization and those mental health, all these sort of things, which I think that over the last couple of years, uh, throughout this COVID thing has really been highlighted, right? Like remote work stuff is very interesting, right? Like there's certainly some benefits, but there's certainly some repercussions to remote work only that that organizations are only finding out now. So and we didn't know, right? Obviously we were forced into remote work at the level or scale that we've experienced it the last couple of years because of what happened in the world with the whole pandemic stuff and all that. However, we didn't know that it was going to affect people in such deep ways, right? So I think we're still, at least my humble opinion is trying to figure it out, which in some ways actually makes me happy because I go, you know what, humans, we're still we're still relevant, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. I mean, it's you know, I think a kind of a core tenet at CoSell, right, is you like I made this mistake on my last startup, right? I think you probably remember GoGo Hire. We probably talked about it,
Yep.
and we did a podcast and stuff. So GoGo Hire was really trying to displace like third party recruiters with technology, and the biggest learning there is like it's very very difficult to displace relationships. And I think that's like a core tenet around what we build at CoSell is like, you know, all this AI that teams are going to try to throw at sales, right? Is it can't replace like a human relationship. As long as we have buyers that want to buy from humans, then then you have to take a relationship first approach, right? And so maybe that's also why like the conversation's starting to pop up now, right? Around um, relationship led growth, customer led growth. You know, what did Scott call it? Go to market network.
Go to market network, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It feels like it's a cyclical thing, right? And just as you were saying, like with that job that you used to have. asking for that referral. Like, most sellers haven't had to do it. They don't do it today, but they need to do it. Right. And so, yeah, we're trying to, you know, eat our own dog food here and follow that practice. Right. So it's
Awesome.
like purely how we go to market.
Well, Pete, thank you so much for being on the show today. If folks wanted to learn more about CoSell or maybe connect with you on social, what are the best URLs to reach you?
Yeah, just my LinkedIn, which is just Pete Ryan at CoSell, and I should pop right up, or Pete at CoSell.io.
Awesome. Well, Pete, it's been great to reconnect. I know we've been kind of touching base over the last few years, and congratulations on CoSell. Super exciting. And I know also that you have a community that you're launching right now around relationship led growth. What are the best ways to sign up for that, and what could folks expect from joining that community?
Yeah, so yeah, you can just go to CoSell.io /community and sign up there. Yeah, what we're doing is like pushing out content around relationship led growth, and then we were going on the angle of like creating a Slack community, but yeah, more to come there around kind of the community that we build at CoSell. So yeah, super exciting stuff coming down the pike.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, my brother, and
Yeah,
I
thank
hope
you.
to see you in Austin sometime soon.
Yeah, please drop me a line, George. It'd be great to meet up in person.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.